Hi, Gino Borges here. I think it was Mark Twain that said a majority of people wouldn't know how to start a conversation if it wasn't for the weather. Well, I would like to add an extension to the spirit of that comment. I think the other uncreative topic that people often frame social interactions with is this question or topic of, what do you do for a living? It is perhaps the most uneventful, uncreative question anybody can ask anybody, especially before you've had a chance to experience a person in different contexts. Why? It pigeonholes people, and it gives people way too much credit for thinking or for believing that they actually know who they are or what they're doing. So I have a much more interesting idea about what we can ask people. Instead of asking people, what do you do for a living? Ask yourself, what does living do for you? It's a much different question. When you frame questions, or when people frame questions in terms of what do you do for a living, it credits this notion of this personal pronoun I, this ego, as if we are in charge of everything. Like this body and this psyche is exerting its force on the world. There is a role for self-will. I will not question that. I'm a big fan of Nietzsche, but I'm also a fan of understanding myself as a conduit in relationship to other phenomena, in relationship to other impressions. So think about it this way. When somebody says, for instance, what does living do for you? A typical question may be, where do you live at? I live in San Francisco. Not really. Do you really live in San Francisco, or does San Francisco live in you? To me, the environment is much more powerful than any person's body or psyche. If you live in San Francisco, you're going to take on the qualities of San Francisco. If you're going to live in Manhattan, you're going to take on the qualities of Manhattan. It's not I live in Manhattan. Manhattan lives in you. What do you do for a living? Most people will say, I am a lawyer, I am an accountant, I am a farmer. Are you? Are you really? Or is lawyering in you? Is law in you? Is business in you? Because each one of those curriculums, each one of those ideologies become a part of, just look at particular industries. You can see motifs within every industry, and it starts to shape people, right? I see this all the time. You look at a particular industry and it comes with a certain archetype. You just know the kind. You just know what you're going to get. Why? Because the ideology and all the customs around it make the people. It actually transforms everything. It transforms the psyche, transforms perception, transforms the body. Everything starts changing. I would even go as far as saying this. When people say what they like, when they say, well, I like the book Eat, Pray, and Love, or I like Ralph Waldo Emerson. The thing is that are we really reading books? Are we really watching movies? Or are movies and text watching us? To me, when I am reading a book, when I'm reading a very powerful book or watching a very powerful movie, and if I stand out of my own way, I'm feeling the impressions upon me. So it seems to me like if we opened ourselves up to this idea of what does living do for you, what it does is that it opens up this possibility to understand yourself as being impressed upon. And then what happens is that you re-engage the notion of self-will, the I. There's a role for that. There's a role for the I. But just as much as that there's a role for that agent, there's also a role for the environment. And the real rich living, the socialized living, the social self is just obsessed with the I. Boring. The more creative existence stretches out the I and puts the I in a nice collaboration, a competitive collaboration with the environment. So then, not only am I pressing upon the environment with my own sense of agency, my own sense of effort, my own thoughts, but the environment is also impressing upon me. And so when we think about this, it's a much richer form of living. Here at the Wild Stuff, we're interested in creative living and living thoughtfully and living with this expansion, this realization of an expanded sense of self? Well, it begins by getting out of these questions, these mundane, inane questions that we just continually to recycle. Is anybody really even listening after you ask, or after they ask you that? Most of the time, I must be honest, periodically I'm guilty of asking that question as well. But then I just realize it just sort of like I turn off my listening. It's really horrible. It's really horrible. To me, cut against the cultural grain. Bring some perspective to your existence with other people, with other things, by letting them understand yourself as being impressed upon. And just feeling it. And then impress upon the world. And this sort of this back and forth and this ebb and flow. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.